Welcome back, everybody. It's a Sufferer style, a tribute style to the man called Trinity, one of the key reggae DJs of the 1970s. Passed away April 9th, 2021. All gone, but me life not gone. The Natty Dread's still there. This will be both a tribute to Trinity and an examination of his role within reggae DJing as it progressed beyond the passing fad some assumed it to be after the success of the early pioneers like U-Roy, like Dennis Al Capone, all of whose influences he absorbed, and especially of Big Youth, the Rasta chanter, who would make the biggest impression on his own style. He is a vital link in the chain of reggae DJing and would, to some extent, prefigure some of the stylistic changes that would occur in ensuing years. He was born Wade Jr. Brammer, 1954, Kingston 13, a ghetto area, to a mother who worked in a government office, father who was a pipe maker. He gravitated toward music very early, did a bit of singing, but it would be the sound system world that would provide the biggest excitement, especially the DJs who would get up and chat on the mic. He would follow all those early pioneers, U-Roy, Dennis Al Capone, but Big Youth was number one to him. But it would be a local friend from the neighborhood named Lester Bullocks, aka Dillinger. All these early DJs had names based off of gangsters or cowboy movies in kind of a rebel outlaw image. Lester Bullocks, aka Dillinger, would have the biggest impact on Trinity. The two moved very closely together. Dillinger was the more established early on, and Trinity would be something of a understudy, a protege to him. Where one was found, usually the other was not too far behind. They were performing on various sound systems. One day, a friend of Wade Brammer's mother, Enos MacLeod, a singer and aspiring music producer, heard him DJing in the lane, liked what he heard, decided to record him. Wade Brammer made his first DJ records under the name Prince Glenn. The first one was called Believe in It for Enos MacLeod. A handful of others would follow, some in combination with his friend Dillinger. They were DJing at that time on a sound system called Simi the Weapon. Following those early sides, none of which did much in terms of sales or distribution, they would move to Channel 1. Initially, Trinity would follow Dillinger there. Dillinger would have a great run of success at Channel 1 studios run by the Hukim brothers with Cocaine, which young Wade Brammer reportedly helped him with some of his lyrics, with CB200 and many other songs and albums recorded at Channel 1 studios. And through his partnership with Dillinger, young Wade Brammer came to the attention of Joseph Hukim, founder of the studio, kind of the head of the Hukim family of Channel 1 Studios, which was then becoming the #1 studio in reggae music. He didn't like the name Prince Glenn, so he thought about it, looked in the Bible, and came up with the name Trinity, more biblical sounding, had a better image. So from that time on, Prince Glenn was no more, and Trinity was in his place. The first song he recorded at Channel 1 would be that one we just heard in the intro, All Gone. It would be followed by others like School Days on the Freedom Blues rhythm track. Channel 1 at that time was making a big impact, reversioning, updating old rhythms from the past. Another one would be Set Up Yourself for Channel 1's Well Charge imprint. This is over Earth and Stone's Jailhouse Set Me Free. But Trinity and Dillinger would both, by necessity, be forced to shop around, looking for a better deal for for financial remuneration for opportunities to record. By the time of his early hits at Channel 1 Studio, like All Gone, like Set Up Yourself, Wade Brammer, now Trinity, had developed a talent for crafting catchy lyrics with a punchy, ebullient style of delivery that made him a charismatic, up-and-coming figure on the DJ scene, and a versatility that enabled him to tackle both deeply cultural Rasta themes as well as more everyday slice-of-life type lyrics. But he was still something of an unproven quantity on record as a recording artist. So when him and Dillinger migrated over to Joe Gibbs's studio on Retirement Road, Joe Gibbs and his studio engineer Errol Thompson as the Mighty Two, then setting themselves up as the chief rivals to Channel 1. Both studios would specialize in updating old rhythms of the past with a brighter, more contemporary sound. Dillinger had to vouch for Trinity as being the more established artist at that point. One day, Trinity was in the dance, observed a well-dressed man in a three-piece suit dancing with a larger woman, got an idea in his head for a song, didn't perform those lyrics live at first. He didn't want some other DJ to steal them, but he proposed the idea to Errol Thompson, the studio engineer, who initially was not that enthused, but when he heard the lyrics, he told him to come by the studio and record it. Trinity, meanwhile, met up with Dillinger. The two went to get something to eat. Dillinger was saying, I hope you're not going to let me down. I had to put my name out there to vouch for you. Trinity said, I've got this. Went back to the studio, nailed the song in one take. It was over a rhythm track originally done by Alton Ellis called I'm Still in Love with You. It had been done over by a female singer called Marcia Aitken, and as you hear her echoed voice, Trinity unleashes some very risque lyrics, maybe anticipating some of the slack lyrical concerns that would enter into reggae DJing later on. The sound's called the three-piece suit and Ting. Scrubber in a constant spring. In a me three-piece suit and Ting. And me diamond socks and Ting. Commenting and answering back on the original vocal, the song caused the assembled studio onlookers to erupt in enthusiasm. One guy who was there making some orders ordered 500 copies right away. The song was released in the UK, reportedly sold 10,000 copies its first week alone. Led to many more songs for Joe Gibbs' studio. Again, following Marcia Aitken here on the 12-inch single on Joe Gibbs. This is the era of the 12-inch disco mix single where the DJ version would be slotted in with a vocal and maybe an instrumental or dub on the flip. I'm Not a Queen here from the Lord Shelley's sound system collection. Trinity on here with Duck Boy would record many sides for Joe Gibbs' studio. Here with Reddy Thomas, Sad Eyes Girl by Trinity. He would also take a young up-and-coming singer named Barrington Levy under his wing, who is totally unknown. He insisted that Joe Gibbs record him. One of the songs he recorded there was My Woman. Barrington Levy would become a big star in his own right. Got his first breaks because of Trinity as one of Joe Gibbs' hit makers with that song, Three-Piece Suit, and many others, would lead to an LP named after that song. There he is on his way to Constant Spring in his Diamond Socks and Ting. Contained many of his hits for Joe Gibbs' studio. Kingston 2 Rock on Errol Thompson's wild mix of the Rockford rock rhythm with doorbells and sound effects going off. There's a dub version of that on one of the African dub volumes. The Mighty 2 sound in full effect here. Trinity prefiguring some of the more hedonistic dance hall concerns of the time, but it would be an answer record to Three Piece Suit that would see even greater success. When it was picked up, the rhythm track was picked up by a teenage girl DJ duo named Althea and Donna, who changed Trinity's Diamond Socks and Ting to Khaki Suit and Ting, and came up with Uptown Top Ranking, which would hit #1 on the British charts. The success of Three Piece Suit saw Trinity become a much in-demand and prolific recording artist in the latter half of the 1970s, working with a plethora of reggae producers, including Linval Thompson, Carlton Patterson and his Black and White label, Alvin Ranglin. Trinity would toast after some of the Gregory Isaacs tunes Alvin Ranglin was putting out at that time. Also a little bit later on, the DJ Tapazuki's brother, Rodwell Sinclair, aka Blackbeard. Blackbeard and Trinity would be longtime friends, lived near each other in the last years of Trinity's life. It would actually be Rodwell Sinclair, Blackbeard, who would check on Trinity and take him to the hospital in his final illness. A link with Bunny Lee saw a number of Bunny Lee produced albums appear of Trinity's through indirect series of circumstances. One is called Dreadlock Satisfaction, appeared in the late 1970s on the Charmers label for some reason, and finds Trinity toasting over tunes originally voiced for Bunny Lee by singer Johnny Clark, finding Trinity in a very relaxed, confident setting, chatting matter-of-fact lyrics on kind of everyday life subjects, even bringing his old pal Dillinger into the lyrics on Linger a While, the two of them still moving very closely together. Through that link with Bunny Lee, Dillinger and Trinity went to the UK, toured, appeared at the Four Aces Club. Through Bunny Lee's links with UK figures on the scene like Count Shelley, Clem Boucher, he would do some recording there as well. Harking back to my Lovers Rock video, the 12-inch single of Louisa Marks' 66th Street on Clem Boucher's label features Trinity on the flip, with Step It Brother Clem referencing producer Clem Boucher. Through Clem Boucher, an LP released in the UK on the Burning Sounds label called Dillinger vs. Trinity. Clash would appear in the late 1970s, around 1978 I think. Appeared with this cover. This is a Burning Sounds reissue from a few years ago. Dillinger versus Trinity, basically in kind of the fashion of the time, takes a handful of tracks from each, puts them on the same LP as kind of a faux clash, but includes material from both. Step It Brother Clem is on there as well as Shelley with the Electric Belly, referencing UK figure Count Shelley. Would also appear on the French label Celluloid. This is actually an original I found, credited to Dillinger Jamaican Dollars, same as that other LP. Includes the Trinity tracks as well on the French Celluloid label. Dillinger, but it is Trinity as well. Back in Jamaica, Trinity had brought his younger brother Robert Brammer into the DJ business. Robert Brammer had adopted the name Clint Eastwood. Again, these Western outlaw names. One day, Trinity carried Clint Eastwood, his younger brother, to Joe Gibbs' studio where he'd had those hits, where he was currently having all those hits like Three Piece Suit, which he had been somewhat overshadowed by Althea and Donna's version. Didn't quite get the financial reward that was coming to him from that big hit Three Piece Suit. Clint Eastwood put out a song on the same rhythm track as Three Piece Suit, the I'm Still in Love with You rhythm, called Badder Than Them, where he leads off with a lyric where he goes, I'm tougher than Trinity, badder than Dillinger. And Dillinger took some exception to this, wanted to go fight his friend Trinity's brother. Trinity had to step in, try and cool things down, but it did cause a ruckus between the DJs. Trinity said, no, we're going to come back at him with on a musical level. Clint Eastwood would go on to quite a successful career on his own as a DJ, both solo and as part of the DJ duo Eastwood and Saint. Here's his album from the early 1980s, Sex Education. Am I the teacher for the class? You can see the lyrical subject matter starting to change toward what would be called slackness. Trinity kind of anticipated that a few years earlier with the somewhat risque, ribald content of Three Piece Suit. Clint Eastwood, meanwhile, was having a hit on a rhythm track called King, originally done as King in the Arena. It had been updated as Death in the Arena. His tune on that rhythm track was starting to make some noise. So Joe Gibbs procured a copy of that rhythm and invited Trinity to come have a toast on it. Trinity, inspired by the 70s TV cop show Starsky and Hutch, would ride that rhythm track, and his version would knock out his brother Clint Eastwood's track. Dillinger helping out on the intro there, I think. King in the Arena rhythm. This version stopped Clint Eastwood's version dead. I'm going to talk about Death in the Arena, but live in the stadium. Trinity's trademark inhaling kind of delivery. Sounded like he's on the verge of running out of breath. I'm going to ride upon the government bus. Trinity's most roots and culture-inspired sides, meanwhile, would be reserved for his work with producer Vivian Jackson, aka Yabby U. Yabby U was carving out a niche for himself in the 1970s as creator of some of the deepest and most spiritual roots reggae ever recorded. He was an artist himself. He was producing other artists. He was working with King Tubby to craft some heavy, hard-hitting dub sides, and he was interested to work with other artists, particularly DJs, that could join him in creating the kind of cultural material, the very spiritual material he was interested in. Trinity was up for it, although Yabby U was kind of always operating on a shoestring budget, couldn't really pay Trinity all that much, but Trinity respected the integrity of Yabby U's work, the vision he was creating through his music, and was keen to work with him. He would record a number of sides with Yabby U, including the monumental Ja Vengeance, here on the Grove 12-inch, Vivian Jackson and Trinity, Grove 12-inch out of the UK, Grove Music, Disco 12-inch single. Blessed Are the Meek with the Prophets, Yabby U's vocal group. Blessed Are the Meek, updating the Slim Smith song The Beatitude, also on Grove Music. This would also be an LP entitled Shantytown Determination, which would appear in the late 1970s, produced by Yabby U. Was kind of brokered by producer Prince Tony Robinson, who had a link with Virgin Records. There was some talk about it coming out on Virgin Records, but it actually appeared on Tony Robinson's TR International label in the late 1970s, Shantytown Determination. Trinity in strictly cultural mood with songs like Rasta Determination, Tradition, Tribal War, Hold Them Jaja, Natty Dread is No Bandulu, Samson, the strongest man. Strictly roots and culture. No three-piece suit kind of ribald lyrics going on for his work with Yabby U. One tune, another tune that would not appear on the album would be the one we're about to hear. The monumental Chant Down Babylon Kingdom, featuring the DJing of Trinity. Brother killing off brother for a piece of bread. Blazing fire. Trinity in fine form in his work with Yabby U. It would be a Trinity song that would give the Blood and Fire compilation Jesus Dread its title. Jesus Dread, a nickname of Yabby U. Trinity immortalized it in a song of the same name. Yabby U, while he shared some of the philosophies of the Rastafarians, did not accept the divinity of Haile Selassie. He looked to Jesus as the Savior, hence Jesus Dread, after the song by Trinity. The Shantytown Determination album, produced by Yabby U, would also be reissued in the year 2000 in expanded form by Blood and Fire Records. Revitalized Trinity's career at a time when he needed it. As he said, the work with Joe Gibbs' studio sold better, but he looked to his work with Yabby U as his best material, and it paid off dividends further on down the line. Trinity would continue recording prolifically through the late 1970s into the early 1980s as the sound of reggae began to shift to the early dancehall sound, rhythms getting sparser, heavier, harder hitting, also a new generation of artists starting to arise, bringing a different style of lyrics, inspired directly by the dance hall, by everyday life, bringing elements of slackness to the fore, maybe to a degree you hadn't seen before. These were elements Trinity had already anticipated in some of his earlier songs, developments he had anticipated already. Albums continuing to come out, not always with his knowledge. One not in my collection is Trinity Meets the Mighty Diamonds. Not surprisingly, him toasting over Mighty Diamonds songs, as he does on this 12-inch single on the Thunderbolt label, again drawing from the Lord Shelley sound system record collection. The Mighty Diamonds, Let the Dollar Circulate, with Trinity bringing up the toasting on the 12-inch single, toasting over Alton Ellis's A Fool rhythm, one of my favorites, Love It Bad. Toasting after Al Campbell's Jah Love on General Lee's High Power label. This is around 1980. You have Trinity again, Jah Me Right Hand Man, the massive 5-man army featuring Trinity along with his pal Dillinger, longtime pal, backed up by singers Wayne Wade, Al Campbell, and Junior Tamlin, all tag teaming on the same song. Originally appeared on the Oak Sound label around 1982. 5-Man Army is a record store reissue from several years ago from the King Spinna label, record store day reissue. This one, the one before it, these will shake the dust off your speakers. But the 1980s saw things start to dry up for the vintage reggae DJs as newer artists came to the fore, as the sound and the styles kept continually changing, opportunities starting to dry up. You would see Trinity's recordings tail off in the 1980s. In the latter part of the decade, he developed a sideline as a singer, switching to his name Junior Brammer, of course born Wade Brammer, to differentiate from his recording as a DJ as Trinity. Junior Brammer features him singing in kind of a Dennis Brown inspired style. Hold Your Corner for Delroy Wright's Live and Learn label would appear around 1987. There would be another one, I think, called Telephone Line. These were well received. He did quite well as a singer, again in kind of a nice, warm and easy Dennis Brown style. In the 1990s, things would start to turn around a bit for the older generation of artists as new generations of reggae fans around the world, particularly Europe, North America, who preferred the older artists, would start to create new opportunities to tour, to record. In 2000, Blood and Fire Records out of the UK would reissue his Shantytown Determination album in an expanded form. They would also bring him on tour with the Blood and Fire sound system, even appeared in my city in the early 2000s. Fortunately, I was not there that night. Trinity took the stage in my town with Dillinger and the Blood and Fire crew. Trinity would continue recording, linking up with international producers. Of course, his style of reggae kind of long since gone out of favor at home in Jamaica, but would continue recording, continue performing as a new generation of fans discovered his music. Lost his wife in 2018. He had a son and a daughter, I believe, but he was suffering from diabetes and complications from that, unfortunately, took his life April 9th, 2021, one of the great reggae DJs, a bridge between the early pioneers and the later artists who rose after him. He will not be forgotten, crucial body of work in reggae. He will rest in peace and his songs will live on. Thank you for watching, everybody.